Revelation, and here it is, that's why I can't find it. Chapter 9 was where we're at, starting chapter 9. And this is a really interesting one tonight. I did quite a bit of research on this. So, Revelation 9. And we're going to read, or I'm going to read, verses 1 through to and including verse 4. So going for it tonight. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So it's a really interesting one, isn't it? And quite sort of unusual, the language that we have there. Now, last week, if you remember, last week I taught about the fact that there are 3 woes. You remember the angel flew and said, woe, woe, woe. And there are 3 woes. And now we see them coming to pass with the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th angel's trumpets. So basically, 3 angels left and 3 woes to come. Yeah, makes sense. So this is the first of the woes. Again, I'm going to use 3 ways of understanding this, which are sort of complementary. There's the consistent biblical symbolism that we're going to be looking for. There is a contextual understanding of what's happening in the passage, and then there's the chronological, historical explanation. There are the 3 things that I said. That's how we're going to understand this passage. So if you cast your mind back to what the first woe was, I said it's blasphemous doctrines, that sort of thing, blasphemous ideas, and also, of course, the spread of them, because that's the great danger, is that these ideas start to spread. And I spoke, if you remember, a while ago about Arius, this teacher, and he was the first kind of major figure who, I think Wesley said, he was the inlet. There were lots of other kind of things that followed his teaching because of what he taught. So we have this blasphemous doctrines. The second woe, I said, was the rise of the Saracens and the roots of Islam. And the third woe, the power and, if you like, the heresies of the Roman Catholic Church. And it's interesting, I think, to reflect that all 3 represent concern really for us and for them as to the purity of the Church of Christ. Even if we go back to when we did 7 churches, Christ's concern for his church was never, it's too small. It was always the purity of the church, the purity of their doctrine, that it shouldn't be diluted or sort of tampered with or anything like that. So once again, we have a star that falls from heaven, but this time not a teacher, not a leader. Why is it different? Because that's what, remember when we looked at wormwood, that star, and I said this is Arius, a teacher, because stars represent teachers and leaders. Why is this different? Well, stars can represent ministers, leaders, teachers, as we've seen before, but they can also represent heavenly beings, what we would typically think of as angels. And there's an example of this in Job 38. Let's have a look. And then I'll give you a bit more as to why it's not a leader. So Job 38. just before Psalms, if you're looking for it. Job 38 verse 4. God speaks and he says, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures? Yes, who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest, or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened, or who laid the cornerstone thereof?" This is it, verse 7. "When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." So the morning stars here, Job 38 verse 7, are representations of angels. Stars don't usually sing. These are the angels singing, as of course they did at the birth of Christ, right? So that's one reason why this star that's seen in Revelation chapter 9 might be an angel rather than a teacher or a leader of the church. But we also come to this conclusion because this star or angel is given a key to the bottomless pit. This is a spiritual, not an earthly dimension. You know, the bottomless pit isn't on earth, so it's unlikely to be a human leader, teacher, whatever. This is taking place in a spiritual realm. The bottomless pit is not the lake of fire, but possibly what the Greeks called Tartarus. So a place where evil spirits abide, or where evil spirits are, what would you say, sort of incarcerated. They're held there. And there are a number of scriptures that point to that idea. So I'm going to bring in quite a few scriptures tonight. So Luke chapter 8. Luke 8. Luke 8 verse 30. This is where Jesus casts the spirit out of the man of the Gadarenes. So Luke 8 verse 30. And Jesus asked him, this is the man of the Gadarenes, he's possessed of evil spirits, he's tormented. And he says, "What is thy name?" And he said, "Legion, because many devils were entered into him." And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep. Now that phrase there, the deep, can also be translated the abyss or the pit. So they're saying, don't cast us out. Don't cast us into that place, the deep, the pit, the abyss. Once again, in Jude, which is not too far from Revelation, just the book before it. Jude chapter 1 verse 6 talks about the angels. These are the angels that rebelled against God. So evil angels, if you like. Verse 6, Jude chapter 1 verse 6 says, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day." So Jude is saying they're there, they're in darkness, he's reserved them for the day of judgment. And then again, just this is the last one now, 2 Peter 2. Second Peter 2 verse 4. "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell," or Tartarus more specifically, "and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment." So just a few passages saying, that's what happened. the angels were put in this place of confinement, the bottomless pit. And now what happens is God has given an angel a key and sent him down to open that pit. It's not a literal key, I don't think, or a literal lock or a literal door with hinges. It's just a way of showing that God has to give them permission for them to come out and to it's like nothing happens in this world unless God has either caused it directly or he's allowed it to happen for whatever his wisdom is. And for us, quite often it's hard to understand the wisdom of God, isn't it? Because we just see our own lives or our family. We don't see the lives of every single person on the planet or whoever's going to live. Like 10 years later, 100 years later, God sees it all at once, and therefore he knows what to allow, what not to allow, and so on. And as we've seen already, he also responds to the prayers of his saints. Yes, I think that's what's happening here, is this pit, this bottomless pit, is being opened in a spiritual dimension, and out of it comes, quote, the smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So this first woe and this smoke, according to John Wesley, represents detestable idolatrous doctrine. Again, it's about teaching. How many times have we seen in the epistles, what is being taught? Because what you're taught and you believe will eventually come out in how you live, won't it? What you actually believe will come out in how you conduct yourself in the world, and things that you do or the things that you don't do. So this is the first woe. We saw how Arius made bitter the waters with his doctrine, and how Nestorius, remember him, obscured the person of Christ, made it harder to see who he really was with his teaching, in the same way that smoke obscures light, obscures the sun, right? Ellicott's commentary, and I went through a few Bible commentaries about this to see what they said. Ellicott's commentary says, the faith of Christ is come to give light unto the world. The enemy too is at work and seeks to obscure her light. So I think that's a good way to put it. Light represents truth, the truth of the gospel, the truth of Christ, and what Satan does is he tries to obscure that. And here we have God allowing him to do that. Just the same as in the book of Job, Satan presents himself before God, and God says, okay, I'm going to allow you to afflict Job, but only in this way. It shows that God is completely in command of everything. So the enemy is at work to obscure the light of the truth. And smoke obscures the sun in the same way that blasphemy and heresy obscures truth. So we see that the origins of these and many other false doctrines, that the origin is not with man, but with demons. It's, all these false religions, false doctrines, blasphemies and so on. It's not man's attempt to understand the truth. It's Satan's attempt to obscure the truth, to kind of, just like smoke obscures the sun, to hide the truth. Let's have a look at 1 Timothy chapter 4, which tells us this. First Timothy 4 verse 1. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. So that's it. That's where the doctrines are coming from. That's where these ideas, whether people recognise it or not, that's where they're coming from. Now then, that's what's happening here. That's the first woe, is again increased blasphemies, heresies, and so on. Not all necessarily Christian heresies, but just ideas around, monotheism, the idea of one God as well. It's like, and I've said before, quite often it revolves around Christ, around what they think Jesus is, or who they think Jesus is. The second feature is quite often as well, they don't believe in eternal punishment. Or, even if they believe in hell, it's like it's not forever. At some point it'll just be kind of over. And it's these two things quite often attack the heart of the Christian message. These are indispensable, really, doctrines that we have. So out of the smoke, it said in the vision, out of the smoke, and notice not out of the pit, but out of the smoke of the pit, come locusts upon the earth. And again, using what I called last week contextual understanding, it's not likely to be literal locusts. There's not suddenly a plague of locusts. They're coming on the earth. So again, this is not an occurrence in a heavenly realm, in a spiritual dimension, because it says that let me see, I'll get you the quote. There came out of the smoke, verse 3, locusts upon the earth. So this is something that's going to happen upon the earth. So the image of the locust, we know in the Bible, is quite often used to describe an army, isn't it? Yeah, used to describe armies. So you have an example, Judges 7, verse 12 says, the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. I know a grasshopper's not a locust, but it's fairly close, isn't it? So this idea being that there's just like so many of them, Again, Joel chapter 2 verse 3 describes the destruction that the Chaldeans bring like this. It says, the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. It's this idea like locusts just kind of devour every green thing, don't they, and just leave it like a wasteland, like a desert. And it was saying this is what the Chaldeans were like. It was as if they were like this locusts who were just like eating everything. So like in front of them it looked like beautiful, like the Garden of Eden, but when they'd been through there, it's just left it like a wasteland. So it's kind of poetic imagery, isn't it? That the Bible's using here. But we get the idea that these locusts represent a multitude of people who are just kind of clearing everything before them. It gives this idea of this fearsome army that's just going forward and kind of destroying everything in front of them, or at least taking it over, if not actually destroying it. And so there's this growth in false doctrines, false religions, and plus a formation, if you like, of an army to spread those doctrines, because it's like there's no internet or anything. If you have an idea or someone has a blasphemous teaching, how does it get to other people? Well, quite often you get these aggressive surges of nations who push forward, and they bring with them their doctrines and their blasphemies and so on. So researching into this, and we looked at, do you remember, the end of the Roman Empire, the Western sort of empire, and the death of the last emperor of Rome. But in the East, there was still the Eastern Roman Empire, and this comes after a long time now, after the Emperor Constantine has made Christianity the state religion for the Roman Empire. It's like, right, this is it, everyone's a Christian now, okay, that's the official religion. But it's round this centre, around Constantinople, named after Constantine, becomes like the real centre of Christianity. It's no longer Jerusalem, right, because that's been flattened by the Romans, but the centre of where Christianity is now sort of shifted to Constantinople. so it's now the Eastern Roman Empire is, at least on the face of it, is at least kind of nominally Christian. You know, it's labelled as Christian. And so what happens is, round about this time, there are a number of not only false doctrines and false blasphemous teachings, but there are also false religions, some of which are very old actually, but they're all kind of around this region. There's one called Manichaeism. Have you heard of that? After false prophet called Mani. And there's another called Zoroastrianism, after Zoroaster. And these are, Zoroastrianism is very old. Zoroastrian, yeah, Zoroaster. So there is another name for it. You might know it by a different name. But do you know Zoroastrianism?
I think these names that you said in Farsi is different.
Yes, well, it could be, could very well be. It has the picture of, what's the symbol? It's like kind of two wings, like this.
Zartosh.
Okay, yeah, well, that's probably it. That's probably it. Yeah. So, and they believe in good and evil, and it's kind of they're fighting all the time. So this is quite important because round about the time that we're talking here, which is sort of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, is like the 400s, something like that, being fairly general. So now what we're looking at is there is the rise of what you call the Sasanian or Sassanid Persian Empire. It's the last great Persian empire. There have been several, from like Alexander the Great's time all the way through. And so there's this last great Persian empire. And just like Christianity became the state religion of the Eastern Roman Empire, Zoroastrianism, or whatever you said, Sasanian Empire becomes Zoroastrianism. That's like the official religion, and of course, if you've got two empires that are more or less right next to each other, right, and one's Christian and one's Zoroastrian, there's going to come a conflict in the middle, isn't there? And this is exactly what happens. So we have successive leaders or shahs start to impose heavy fines on Christians to stop the spread of Christianity. So it's like, well, if you identify as a Christian, you're going to be taxed. It's like an economic attack on Christians, and so it encourages people to stay within their own religion and not convert to Christianity, and it also limits the spread of the gospel because, well, who wants to be taxed heavily, and so this is an attack on the church, and so this is why it's important here that we see this spread of a false religion, Zoroastrianism. So later there will even be a war, the Byzantine Sasanian war. That's not till the 600s, but and there'll be the besieging of Constantinople, which is the Christian centre in the East at that time. They won't actually take it at this time, but they will be attacking it. Verse 3 of Revelation 9 says, unto them, that is the Sasanian Persians, was given power. So God allowed them to have power, right? Because kingdoms rise and fall at God's command. So God gives them power as the scorpions of the earth have power. So the idea was God gave them power so they could afflict people, torment people, and it seems that there wasn't a lot of people being killed, but there were a lot of people being imprisoned and so on. It seems to be mainly Jews and Christians, because this is a major kind of Christian region. So again, using this sort of chronological historical explanation, there are several golden ages of the Sasanian period, and they're not only achieving astonishing military success, taking over places that were Christian, like Armenia, really important cities like Alexandria and Antioch. Remember, Antioch's the first place the Bible says where believers were called Christians. So these were like really, and Armenia is like in a really important position strategically. But the Sasanian Persians were taking over these places. Not only are they doing that, but of course they're spreading this false religion as they go. And so as I did my research into this, it was saying that the Zoroastrian priesthood were very powerful at this time, and to a certain extent were the power behind the throne. They're kind of pushing it forwards. And this is the last great Persian Empire before the coming of Islam and the Muslim caliphate, the caliphs, you know. Yet it seems that even though many sort of nominal Christians suffered, and Jews too, that by the secret power of God, those who, quote, were sealed in the forehead, and we'll come on to that in a minute, were not hurt. It's like God is somehow protecting real Christians at this time. So, like I said before, if you've got an empire and you say, right, everybody's a Christian now, does that make everybody a Christian? No, because it's a personal choice, a personal belief on Christ and a receiving of his Spirit that makes you a Christian. So just by saying, right, we're all Christians now, what you end up with, and this is why I believe God allowed this, is you end up with a church full of people who aren't really Christians. And this is bad for the church. This is bad for, you know, the purity that I was talking about of doctrine and the purity of people's lives. So now what we get, God is allowing this hostile enemy to come upon the Christian, the Eastern Roman Empire, and basically to take prisoner those Jews and those nominal Christians who aren't really Christians and imprison them. And so what he's preserved are real Christians. And again, we've got this phrase that appears here in Revelation 9 verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So it's kind of a picture again of the locusts coming, and it's the idea as if God has protected the trees or has protected the grass. And it's similar, we looked at about the trees and the grass before, trees representing important people, leaders, teachers, the grass representing the common people. So it's saying, of real Christians, those who are leaders, God's protecting them. Those who are, genuine teachers and so on, God's protecting them. And all the other Christians who make up the congregation who are real Christians, he's protecting those. But these that aren't real Christians, they're suffering under this attack. So we have this mark on the forehead, wasn't it? Only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And again, there's this seal, this mark on their forehead. Is it likely to be a physical thing on people's foreheads? Is it going to be like, a tattoo or something on their head, a painting of something across? I don't think so, because you could just put one on, couldn't you? I don't think that's what it's going to be at all. I don't think that's what it's saying. So then think about this. When people talk about the mark of the beast, and we'll see that later on in the book of Revelation, is that likely to be something physical then as well? Is that likely to be something you can see? Is it likely to be a piece of technology stuck in your head? I don't think so. What I think it's saying is the mark or the seal of God, it's as if it were on their forehead. In other words, the person has the fruit of the Spirit. It's like obvious that they are a real, genuine Christian because they're just different from everybody else. They're different from, the people of the world. It's like, it's clear this person is a Christian. And I think it will be clear this person is worshipping the beast when we get to it. We'll get to it. So I think that's what it's saying. It's as clear as if they were marked on their forehead. You can see it straight away. But there does seem to be this special providence of God where he's just protecting. God doesn't always do this, let me say. But it seems at this particular time, this army of locusts, as it describes them, just numerous, powerful, is being allowed to do something, to expand this territory, and it's having a purifying, a purging effect on the church. It's cleansing the church.
Even during the Passover,
yes,
the blood of the lamb was in the houses, and those were spared, and the other people were killed.
Yes, very good. Yeah. The Passover, and the destroyer passes over, and this is a kind of a destroyer. Yeah.
Was there a moment